No more messing around. Hey Superthirst, Cindy here, and we are going to be talking about the premiere episode of Power Rangers Dino Fury. Spoilers if you have not seen it, and I have notes written out, so I have a few talking points. Starting with what's most likely going to be the Rangers hangout, which is let's call it the Buzz Blast Studios. Buzz Blast is most definitely a reference to BuzzFeed. Stupidity and all. And the only difference between BuzzFeed and Buzz Blast is the fact that BuzzFeed will do articles and stuff about the paranormal. I don't really watch or do anything involving BuzzFeed. I don't really like BuzzFeed. But I'm almost positive this is a reference to Buzz Blast is a reference to BuzzFeed. The drone scanner thing, it would have been more interesting if it was a ground penetrating, it would have been more realistic if it was a ground penetrating radar, like most archaeologists will use, but I can understand why they didn't go with that, because they needed to be up in the air in order to scan, the Dino hinge thing. Mr. Buzzkill, otherwise known as Warden Garcia, and the fact that his last name is Garcia, I'll get into that in a bit, but Mr. Buzzkill, that is, I'm pretty sure that definitely sets a reputation for him, if that's literally the first nickname we hear of him, or literally the first name we hear of him. Now, as for how the Rangers get into the Dino Chamber, that's what I'm going to be calling it. I'm going to be calling it the Dino Chamber. Not just Dino Hinge, but the Dino Chamber. And it was pretty cool how it, like, I wouldn't say it tied very much into it, but what I don't understand is how the scanner was able to, by all accounts, awaken the dinosaurs, which is basically what happened. I guess more will be revealed later on, but it's just weird. But I like how it's basically, all things considered, it's the Dino hinge that activates the chamber, awakening in a way. Now, speaking of the chamber, to my knowledge, this is the very first time ever that the villain of the series, in this case, Void Knight, has been able to get into the Dino base, or just the Rangers base in general, on the very first episode. Another thing that this episode was clearly, this episode in this series is clearly going to push against, is the fact that the runt of the season, Hingemen, those Hingemen are definitely going to be the grunts of the season. And they were supposed to be originally the Rangers' allies. Okay, I have a note saying that I shouldn't mock the name, but given all of the other grunt names, this is the Hingeman is, like, it's the most non-Power Ranger name, and yet it fits perfectly because Hingeman actually, like, is two words that, like, if you put it into a spell checker, it's basically, I don't know if it's one word or two words, but either way, I mean, it works as just normal words, unlike any other previous season. This is grunts. Now, speaking of the Hingemen and how they become the villains grunts, the mentor, Salon, I'm just gonna call her Salon until I rehear the pronunciation, she's gonna be very interesting to watch. We could be looking at a Circuit Claire-esque character, and you know, I like Circuit, and Claire was fine. Season could have been better, but Claire was good. So I personally can't wait to see what Salon has in store for us. The first grunt fight was pretty cool, as was the first morph. Speaking of the first morph, the way that the power sources things worked, with how, the Dino Blades basically, or the Chrono Fury Sabers, that's what they're called, Chrono Fury Sabers, basically reacted to Ollie, the Blue Ranger, and Amelia, the Pink Rangers. I want to say hearts. Basically, it was their hearts. And so Stallone is the one that gives them, and actually lands it this time, gives them the power sources that would, by all accounts, help them morph. And just the fact that the power sources, definitely, the power sources and the morphers themselves, just, they reminded me wholeheartedly of the Dino Thunder morphers all the way back in 2003. It just, it was a pretty cool thing. And another thing about that morpher sequence, I think it really combines the Lost Galaxy morphers, because it takes the Saber idea and that gives them the morphers, and it basically adds in the Dino Thunder thing. Now, speaking of the whole morphing sequence, or the whole fight after they're morphed, they meted hard on it, talking about the powers, what the suit can do, how the suit works, and as Ollie said, if you watch the news, Zords, which I kind of wish that they had, actually used Zords in this episode. I can see why they didn't. Like, they needed to space everything out, but I kind of wish they did. But the fact that Ollie and Amelia both meted about the talking of Power Rangers and how they work, well, to my knowledge, I did not hear where this Ranger team is. I did not hear, like, the name of the city. So, we could be looking at, like, any city, and maybe we're looking at this, to my knowledge, this is most likely our world, or the main universe's version of the Dino Charge, universe. We don't really know. It feels that way, but we don't know. Now, back to the grunts for a minute. Usually we see the grunts, like, go down, and then they, it takes them going down, and then they can get back up and stuff, sometimes. It takes, like, multiple hits to knock them down. Not so here. You basically just strike them, and they hit something hard, and they're gone. Reminds me of the Z putties, where you had to hit the Z on the specific weapon, on the chest of the petties, and that's what destroys them. Side note, worst idea on the history of the planet, but now the Red Ranger's entrance was pretty cool, and I like his exchange with Salon about who the Rangers are, who the Pink and Blue Rangers are, and how Salon just says, they're friendly. Yeah, like, yeah, like, go with that, sure. That was just so funny. But speaking of Zato, his aim could have been a wee bit better. And I mean, I get how it wasn't all of his fault, because technically Void Knight had Bilicons tried to pull it out, but Zato's aim could have been a wee bit better and not hit the dang capsule thing that was keeping in the Monsters of the Week. Speaking of the Monsters of the Week, sporks. These apparently work way different to how previous any Monster of the Week had worked before. Because even Void Knight didn't know what the sporks, to my understanding, even Void Knight did not know what the sporks were. But he definitely knew he wanted them. But the fact that the sporgs basically disappeared all over town, it's got me thinking that it's gonna be, like, this is the very first season where even the villain doesn't know what monster is going to be the monster of the week. I mean, he'll probably figure it out, like, after the first attack and then, like, try to recruit them so they can, like, make him mega. But as of right now, no. He only has one sporg in his possession that's working for him directly. So the sporgs are gonna make for an interesting, concept. Speaking of the sporgs, there's literally one right underneath the wheel of a truck. Like, that is the worst. I don't know if that's the worst or the best place to hide / hatch. Now, Zato's unmorphed actual reveal, I mean, it was pretty cool. It was weird, but it was cool. And now we get to one of my favorite parts. Zato's backstory. Now, I would say it's definitely, it's definitely got some, Kruger / Andros vibes to it. Do you want to know what I feel like this mostly represents? Like, what this really made me remind me of? What his backstory really reminded me of? I'll give you one big, fat, one of my favorite Rangers hints. Seriously, I mean, this had, like, obvious notes of Animaria kind of backstory to it, except the whole Animaria thing was on a different planet, and then they came here, but it definitely reminded me of Merrick's whole backstory with Animaria. Now, the bit about, about some sort of nightly group giving the 5 knights, maybe 6 knights that had gone to Earth, and had, given the, at the time, let's just call them the knights, their morphing powers, and most likely Zords. It's gotta be some, I feel like it's some kind of, like, morphing grid version of, like, because don't forget, at that point in time, in another universe, Dino Charge was, saving the planet from, basically Sledge. So the first chronological morph in all of Power Rangers history, could have, even on a different Earth, but it could have sent something through the morphing grid, and as I was traveling through the different universe, it just, like, shifted to whatever the current people who are not supposed to be in the past who are not supposed to be on Earth in the past, it could have just shifted to what those people needed at that time, which was the, I'm just gonna call them the Dino Knights. Dino Knight kind of power. Okay, now with the main episode out of the way, I'm gonna talk about, the extra little bit we saw at the end there. It's basically the same commercial kind of thing that we've seen previously, but I wanted to add in the fact that we could be looking at maybe a mixture of what, Dino Charge did and a Super Dino mode. I'm almost positive we're looking at a Super Dino mode. And I really can't wait for that. Speaking of not being able to wait for that, I can't wait to see how, the Black Ranger and the Green Ranger is Javier and Izzy, Garcia. This is the first time we're having half-siblings, distinctly half-siblings, or step-siblings. I'm gonna say half-siblings. We're having distinctly half-siblings as a Ranger team. But what I find, finally going back to the, Mr. Buzzkill, Warden Garcia. the fact that his last name is Garcia, which means he's probably gonna be related to Javier and Izzy, that is gonna be gold. You know what else is gonna be gold? Ozzy and Amelia having to work together. Even though Ozzy is literally the hugest skeptic, a huge skeptic, clearly. And, I mean, he's probably, like, a skeptic out of, like, fear of the unknown, but still a skeptic. And how Amelia loves, paranormal stuff, like, what we're gonna be dealing with. I'm just calling it now. This is gonna be a team for the record books. Okay, but that was just my thoughts. What about yours? How did you feel about today's episode? How do you feel about this new season in general? Leave your comments down below. Please comment, like, and subscribe for more. Catch ya on the flip side.